this is Todd, and I'm just a regular dude walking in the Word. Today I'm out here at a place that's about 3 miles from our house, and about 3 miles that way is our house. But then about 6 miles out that way is Carlton Reserve. I'm going to talk about that later, but I decided to come out here to in front of a lake. All right. Today we're talking about the Sea of Galilee, but the Sea of Galilee was much larger than what you see in the back here. That was about 7 miles wide and about 13 miles long, so huge compared to this. But I want to read today, we're revisiting what we did just yesterday. I'm going to reread Mark 6 verses 45 through 56. It says this: Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. After leaving them, he went on the mountainside to pray. Later that night, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and he was alone on dry land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. Shortly before dawn, he went out to them, walking on the lake. He was about to pass by them, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out because they saw him and were terrified. Immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves, and their hearts were hardened. When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret and anchored there. As soon as they got out of the boat, people recognized Jesus. They ran throughout the whole region and carried the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages, towns, and countryside, they placed the sick in the marketplaces. They begged him to let them touch him, even the edge of his cloak, and all who touched him were healed. What I want you to, for us to focus on today is this: that I have the lake behind me here, but the lake was much larger then in the Sea of Galilee. This took place at about 3 o'clock, in between 3 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the morning. So it was dark. They had been paddling all night long. So the disciples were weary with paddling. I get tired of paddling, for a few hours, but these guys had been paddling all night long. So as they were paddling, and then, the storm came out, and we had talked about last time how because of the way the topography is around there and the mountains around the lake, the storm can come in pretty quick and make it hard to paddle. So these guys were paddling, and then it's pitch dark at night. The storm is going crazy, and all of a sudden they see a guy walking on the water there. Okay, we don't see guys walking on the water. If I looked out there and I saw someone walking across the water, I'd freak out too. So these guys, the disciples, were scared. Okay, and so naturally we would expect that to happen. But Jesus said to them, "It's I. Don't be afraid." If you out that way, about 6 miles is Carlton Reserve. I was riding bike out there one day, and I had met a guy, and he knows all about the preserve out there and everything. And he said, he told me a story how one time there was a couple guys actually. They were doing some drug running and had a plane and kind of crash landed in the preserve there. And back then it was owned by a ranch. And so it landed there in the preserve. The topography would be much like what you see here, only more wooded and stuff, but swampy. It landed there and kind of got in the swamp area. And when it did, one of the ranchers came out and knew what was going on. They were drug running. He went and he called the sheriff, and the sheriff said, "Well, I'm not coming out tonight yet. I won't be there till tomorrow." Well, the rancher, he went and he just handcuffed those guys. They were beat up, but they were still living and stuff. He handcuffed them to the plane and left them there overnight. next morning when the sheriff comes, they were freaking out. I mean, they had, heard all kinds of noises. These guys were, city slickers, and had heard all kinds of noises during the night. And, with they know the alligators are there and everything else. They had freaked out. And so when the sheriff came the next day, they were so happy to see the sheriff. They were like, we surrender. Just get us out of here. We don't want to be out here in this swamp area. When the disciples were out there, and when they saw Jesus, they were scared. And when we read this passage here, we don't think about how scared they were, being out there at night and then suddenly seeing Jesus on the water like that. But Jesus just said, it's all right, don't be afraid. And then he got into the boat, and then he goes with them quickly to the other side, and then he just starts healing people and stuff again. So in our day and age, there's a lot of things we can be afraid of. I can be afraid of, like, where's the next job's coming from during this time, all kinds of stuff, how my kids are going to grow up, all that stuff. But if God can take care of, calm that storm, and he did a whole bunch of miracles then, if you remember. But if he can just walk out on the water, calm the storm, and hop in the boat, surely he can take care of my things that I'm worried about. So just some things to remember today, and thanks for joining us on the Regular Dude Walking in the Word, and we'll see you tomorrow. Lord's blessing to you.